A Tennessee school board voted earlier this month to remove mouse from an 8th grade language art curriculum over concerns of profanity and images of nudity in its depiction of Polish Jews who survived the Holocaust. The book is a Pulitzer Prize-winning graphic novel. I'm kind of baffled by this, the author Art Spiegelman told CNBC in an interview about the vote to bar the book by the McKinn County School Board. He called the school board Orwellian for its action, as a number of battles in school systems around the country take place over curriculum. What do you think about this, Robby?
So I'm looking on, just Google search results, all these news stories. CNBC, Tennessee School Board bans Holocaust graphic novel. BBC, Tennessee School Board bans teaching of Holocaust graphic novel. They didn't ban the book. They just are not going to use it in, it's not in the required curriculum. They just looking for a different book, swapping out books. So we don't need to get too crazy about, books like history not being taught or whatever. So it looks like there's some misinformation. Now, I don't know, there's also they had a school board meeting, and apparently people are making fun of the minutes of the school board meeting. So maybe there was some irate parent in there who was like, stop teaching my kid I don't know, I haven't looked at that. So it might be some parent was saying unreasonable things, but they didn't ban the novel, they're just not going to require it to be taught.
Right, it's not part of the curriculum anymore for 8th grade.
Right. What do you think about this?
Robby, Mouse is not a children's book. It is a very sad, disturbing, important adult book.
Really?
Yes, it is
I've never read it.
Graphic novel about the Holocaust that I believe begins with the author finding his mother naked in a bathtub having committed suicide because of her memories of the Holocaust. Now, that is a very important thing for adults to encounter. The book is beautiful. It depicts Jews as mice and Nazis as cats, and it really gives you a sense of what it was like, but at the same time, it is not a children's book. It is full of nudity. It is full of profanity. And I have to say that, across the world, Orthodox Jews and ultra-Orthodox Jews are managing to do a very good job teaching their children about the Holocaust without depictions of nudity. There's actually even an ultra-Orthodox Holocaust museum specifically designed so that children from that community whose parents don't want them exposed to nudity and to profanity can experience the horrors of the Holocaust and learn about it. So I feel a little bit like, this is an amazing book. It's an important book, but it is not a book for children. I read it when I was way too young, and I was somebody who was already very immersed in the Holocaust. And so I feel a little bit like I don't quite understand the outrage here, and I feel a little bit like it's being manufactured.
I think I disagree. I don't know that 8th grade is too young to grapple with nudity and profanity and those sorts. I'm trying to think of, 8th graders they're 13, 14,
okay. I might agree with you, actually. 8th grade might be a good age to read it.
Yeah.
At the same time, we can understand that it is a legitimate position for a religious parent to feel differently than we do, right?
Yes, and public schools are a problem, right? We're all having these very intense debates over what the government-run school should teach. If it was just, well, this school teaches it, and you can just, if you don't like it, you can go to some other school. I'm all about families choosing schools that align with their values. I don't think I would necessarily be shielding 8th graders from this kind of thing. I haven't read the book. Maybe it's more intense.
But it's not like they're banning Elie Wiesel's Night, right? It's not like they're saying no children can read Night.
Yeah. I read that that was in my sophomore year of high school curriculum. Yeah, that book is certainly appropriate for.
Of course,
for 10th graders.
yeah. Kids should learn about the Holocaust. It's extremely important.
It's a disturbing book, though.
It's very disturbing.
Yeah.
The Holocaust was disturbing, but I think Mouse should be available in the school library. I certainly took advantage of my school library to find all sorts of books that I knew that my parents didn't want me to be reading. But at the same time, I just feel like, first of all, you're 100% correct. To call this a ban is ridiculous.
Yeah.
They can say we don't want this version of Holocaust education. We'll find another book. But also, I really do feel that there's sort of a kind of manufactured outrage here. People overstating what actually happened because people don't want parents to have a say in what their children study, and people have a lot of contempt for religious people. The commentariat, people on Twitter, they don't respect the rights of religious people to say, actually, I don't want my child being exposed to this before they're ready. Not the fact of the Holocaust, but a very, very intense comic drawing description of it. I don't think children should be watching Schindler's List. It's really, really disturbing.
So we watched that in 10th grade. It's a big difference between 8th and 10th, maybe.
No,
I don't know. So I saw Neil Gaiman, who's also a graphic artist. So he shared the story of this and said there's only one kind of people who would vote to ban mouse, whatever they are calling themselves these days. So he's suggesting that it's being banned because right-wing people are Nazis and don't want you learning anything about Nazis. So that's clearly not what's happening here, right? It's a concern over sexual imagery, that kind of thing.
But so many people were saying that. There was an NPR host who tweeted something like, are the people banning this cats? Which is like another way of saying, are they Nazis, right? Because they're depicted as cats in the book.
Did a cat write this?
Exactly. Did a cat ban this, right? And I just think that move to call anybody who's religious, anybody who may have, higher sensitivities around nudity to you, a literal Nazi, because they don't want their child seeing images of, suicide, nudity, whatever. Like, come on. I mean, we should be better than that.
Our kids first encounter like nudity or nude images now, like probably when they're 5 because of the internet or something. Are we like trying to protect our precious children's purity for just kind of an unreasonably long period of time, given the reality of how the world works these days? I mean, intensely, even musical acts, culture that people would consume that would have been considered transgressive and risque and very edgy and overly sexual, from when Madonna, from when I was a kid or something. Today, now we don't even bat an eyelash at Ariana Grande or Nicki Minaj or it's so much further than that.
Right.
And it's just and maybe I'm sure lots of conservative people think it's gone way too far, but it's like a reality. So, and that's in everybody's faces. So then it's like, well, why is this book even close to the amount of sexual imagery that the average child, sees on TV for 5 seconds, even not even watching porn, but just watching normal or what is considered normal in our culture now.
So if these parents who took mouse off the curriculum are putting on, very risque, whatever, music videos by Ariana Grande. I'm not familiar with her oeuvre. I don't know how risque she is, but if they are actually simultaneously allowing their children to engage in that kind of a thing, then I would say, that would make me look at this decision askance. But I think it's fair to assume that these are the kinds of parents who are probably, putting, nanny locks on their kids' phones and computers and saying, look, we're going to try to forestall that as long as we can. And I think this is a fair move. I mean, I'm not sure I would have made the move if I was on that school board, but I think it's definitely a legitimate move to have made.
All right, well, interesting stuff. Glad we discussed it. We'll have more Rising right after this. Stay with us.